Okay, so it's time to start sort of wrapping up Plato. So we've already discussed what he thinks is wrong with democracy. He thinks we should impose an aristocracy instead, and um, we've seen how he thinks we can make a city just. Remember, the city's just when the parts are all ordered properly, and we talked about what that means. It means it'll have certain virtues. Um, and then we discussed how we get this proper ordering, right? So we know what the proper ordering is, but how do we get there? And we talked about how that's the natural division of people into the three classes, right? We look to people's natural abilities and we assign them a place in society accordingly. And so we get this proper ordering of the city by following these natural abilities. And it's pretty clear why the craftsmen become craftsmen and the courageous and the physical and warlike become guardians, right? It's clear that they just fit those roles. But it's not as clear that the intellectual should be the rulers. Right? So why would Plato think this? Right? Why are those with a natural affinity for intellectual endeavors and gaining knowledge about reality the ones who are most fit to rule? Why not some other qualities? Why not some other natural ability? And so something we've sort of been mentioning all along is that those who want to gain knowledge of reality and actually have the ability to gain knowledge of reality will come to know the forms, right? And for Plato, that's everything. Right? So we come to know the form of justice, we come to know the form of morality and goodness and virtue, so on and so forth, right? And so when you have the knowledge of all of these important things, you're able to use that knowledge in order to properly rule the state and care for your citizens. And so take a minute to sort of think to yourself about this, right? Like, who would you want in charge of you? So, in making decisions about how your life is going to be structured, how you're allowed to interact with other people, the type of resources your society is going to have, right? So, do you want somebody who was just sort of voted in because he's the most popular? Or do you want somebody who actually has knowledge about all of those important concepts that are necessary for structuring the state properly in the way that we should? So hopefully to motivate this idea for you a little bit more, because it still might seem a little strange to you. I mean, we want this all the time already, right? So you're about to get on a ship and sail across the Atlantic. For us, I guess closer, we'll be sailing across the Pacific. Um, but who would you want to be the captain of the ship? Do you want, you're going to look around and say, okay, that's the most popular guy. He's the captain now. Right? No, that's not what you're going to want. You're going to want somebody who is skilled in the arts of navigation and sailing, who actually has some experience doing it. Right? So here's a clear case where we want an expert. Right? We don't just want any random person. We don't want somebody who's popular or strong or good at watchmaking. We want somebody who's an expert in sailing, right? And that's the captain. Uh, who do we want to be a judge? So say you're in trouble with the law and you're going to court. You walk into the courtroom and you see everybody standing around. Like, what's going on? They're like, well, we're picking the judge for your case. Like, oh, okay, well, how are you doing that? They're like, well, we all really like Timothy over here. Timothy's a really nice guy. He hasn't said anything mean since we walked in. He's has these political views we like. So we're going to put Timothy in charge. We vote. The majority says Timothy. Timothy's the judge for your case. I take it most of you would be pretty upset if that's what happened, right? Some random guy named Timothy, who doesn't have any expertise in law, is now going to be my judge. No, you want somebody who has the skill and knowledge, who's able to interpret legal documents, who's able to understand the law, right? Otherwise, you think you're going to be treated unfairly, right? So it's really important that once again you get an expert in there. So we already want experts in all of these different scenarios in our life. So why not want the same thing when it comes to our government? Now, I understand it's going to be a little bit harder to figure out what an expert is when it comes to government, but hopefully you see we want an expert there, right? Just like we want experts in all these other important endeavors, we want an expert in control of the government. So even if you disagree with Plato about what makes an expert for government, maybe you're on board now with seeing maybe there are some problems with pure democracy. Right? Maybe we shouldn't just be electing whoever has enough money to run a campaign this cycle. We need somebody who actually has some expertise in there. This has been a big problem for people worrying about Trump's cabinet picks, right? They're worried about the woman who was put up for Secretary of Education having absolutely no expertise in running a student loan system or anything like that, right? So we clearly want experts there. Um, Now, the important part, obviously, where you and Plato might disagree is what makes an expert. But insofar as Plato thinks that these rulers will have knowledge of all of the important concepts, it seems like they really would be the most qualified for the job, right? So if you believe in the theory of forms and you believe that the intellectuals can gain this knowledge, then clearly they are the best suited for the job in Plato's city. Okay, so now we know sort of how to divide people up and how we get the proper ordering. But there's still an important question, right? How do we actually determine who's fitting where, right? So we're going to have all these people, all these children being born. It's going to be pretty hard to determine who goes where immediately, right? We're going to need to see their skills developing. And we need to give everybody an even chance. And so Plato thought the education system should be very rigorous, right? So by the age of 18, everybody would have an education in literature and music and elementary mathematics. Then they'd have physical and military training, and then they'd have some ethical training, and then they'd go on to do public service. Uh, and at any point in this sort of cycle, you could fall off, right? So if you get through all of your basic education, and then you go into your physical education and you just suddenly fail, right? Well, then you're not meant to be a guardian. You go back, find out what your skill is, and you go into the craftsman class. You make it through your basic education, you make it through your physical education, you start your ethical training, and you're just not cut out for it, right? You were much better suited for the physical activity. So you're fit to be a guardian. Right? And then finally, for those who've gone on through all the cycles, they make it through the ethical training. Then they go on and do public service. Plato thinks only after you've done all that and you've reached age 50 are you fit to even be a ruler. Right? So rulers will be the ones who have absolutely the most training. They've been tested for the longest amount of time to see if they're fit for this role. And only after all of that education and time and experience can they actually become a ruler. Okay, but the really important thing to notice here is that Plato's not just looking at a child at birth and saying, okay, red hair and he's going to need glasses, throw him into the craftsman class. Blonde hair and look at the muscles already, throw him into the guardian class. This kid's playing with blocks at an early age. He's a ruler, right? It's not happening like that. Everybody has an equal shot insofar as they all get an equal education. Right? So everybody sort of goes through the same motions, and then it's only their natural abilities that hold them back from progressing. It's not anything about the society or education system Plato's put in place that limits people. It's free and open to everybody, and only your own natural ability can keep you from progressing. So in that sense, even though it seems like Plato's society will end up having some inequality, right? There's not going to be class mobility once you become a craftsman. It's not like there's a good shot of you becoming a ruler in the near future, right? Your natural ability is said that's off the table. But still, Plato wants to, and this is really important, give everybody that equal shot, equality of opportunities still seem to be important. Okay, so what else do we need to say before we finish off here? Oh yeah, so something you're probably pretty worried about, right, is why would people not just riot against this political system, right? So imagine yourself, you really want to be a ruler. You're born from age 5 when you can start thinking about it. You're like, I want to rule. I want to do that. And then you get into your education and you make it through your basic education, and then you start your physical training, and you just fail miserably. And so the rulers come down and they say, okay, well, you're fit for the craftsman class, so that's where you're headed. Why wouldn't you rebel and say, no, I need this opportunity. I can continue to try. I'll work harder, and maybe one day I'll become a ruler. Why do I have to just go by what nature's imposed on me? Right? And so that's a big worry. We have to find out why the lower class of people would still be content with their position. Right? And so here Plato comes up with what he calls the noble lie. Right? And so Plato says, in order to keep everybody satisfied, what we need to do is tell them that when you were born, the gods naturally infused you with a different type of metal in order to determine your rank. Right? So you could have copper or brass, and that meant you were fit to be a craftsman. You could have silver infused into you, and that meant you're fit to be a guardian. Or you could have gold infused into you, and that meant you're fit to be a ruler. So Plato thought that and the education system would keep people satisfied with their positions in life. Right? You'd have the noble lie to tell people that that's just sort of naturally what the gods gave you, so you should be content with that. Right? You don't question the gods. And it seemed like, although this isn't true, it appeared as though people had class mobility. Right? It looks like you could jump through the classes if you just got back into your education. So somebody in the craftsman class would go, well, man, I was infused with brass and copper. I'm meant to be a craftsman. But look, those people just got a greater education, and now they're guardians and rulers. If I just go apply myself again, I can be a guardian or a ruler. Right? So it appears as though there's class mobility when really there isn't, and the noble lie keeps them from questioning their place too much. All right, so we're going to do one more short video after this, giving you some extra information about the Guardian class and how, even though the history of philosophy, especially ancient philosophy and philosophy in the medieval period, is full of a lot of sexist ideas, Plato's philosophy, political philosophy, and the city, the republic, is actually advances equality quite well. And we'll talk about why that is and why he thinks that's important. I'll see you guys in the next video.